believe that the month is almost over. We're going backwards in chronology. We're 100 years after the first return from exile. And we're looking at what Nehemiah had to say about the events of his day. It's before Christ, more than 400 years before Christ. And he's facing some of the same things that Christ taught us that we would have to be facing. Maybe not in literally building walls, but certainly in doing things for God. So let's take a look at today's scripture as we look at Nehemiah chapter 4, verses 8 through 18. All of them conspired together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to cause a disturbance in it. But we prayed to our God, and because of them we set up a guard against them day and night. Thus in Judah it was said, the strength of the burden bearers is failing, yet there is much rubbish, and we ourselves are unable to rebuild the wall. Our enemies said, they will not know or see until we come against them and kill them and put a stop to the work. When the Jews who lived near came and told us 10 times, they came up against us from every place where you may turn. Then I stationed men in the lowest part of the space between the wall, the exposed places, and I stationed the people in families and with their swords, spears, and bows. When I saw their fear, I rose and spoke to the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people. Do not be afraid of them. Remember, the Lord is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. When our enemies heard that it was known to us that God had frustrated their plans, then all of us returned to the wall, each one to his work. From that day on, half of my servants carried on the work, while half of them held the spears and the shields and the bows and the breastplates, and the captains were behind the whole house of Judah. Those who were rebuilding the wall and those who carried the burdens took their load with one hand, doing the work, and the other holding a weapon. As for the builders, each wore his sword girded at his side as he built, while the trumpeter stood nearby, or near me. Now there's some mighty wonderful lessons that we can learn from these just 10 or so pieces of scripture. First of all, in verse number 8, sometimes you're going to find you have to fight. There's times when people will attack you and you got to be ready. But let's take a look at the second principle here. Sometimes we should remember that we have to talk to God, and that our fighting would be defensively only and not offensively. Thirdly, in verses 10 through 13, we need to remember that it's not always going to be easy. Lots of times we're going to run into opposition. And fourthly, we got to remind one another and reassure one another that we serve a mighty and awesome God, and that he will be there with us, even in the most difficult of times. And finally, we need to realize that we must always remember that God is nearby, and he is our trumpeter. He's the one that can trumpet the sound of warning and get us on our defense so that we can stand against the wiles of the devil or whoever our enemy happens to be. Now, this is a mighty powerful passage of Scripture. The first one we looked at yesterday was the opposition of words. Now we got the sticks and stones. But remember, we have an awesome God who's our trumpeter, who will warn us about the coming attacks and will allow us to establish our defenses, and will be with us whenever there is a difficulty. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you. Have a great day.